Little Izuku was perilously lost amongst the harsh torrential wind, pillaging through the forest. The leaves, branches, and occasional stones caught in the vicious air currents sailed past him or thumped into his raised forearm. His vision obscured, he wandered off the path that led home. A despairing panic raced from his heart to seize his throat. He thought to shout for help, but even as young as he was, he knew the effort would be fruitless. His voice did not measure up to the howls of the gale, and no one else would be caught in Mother Nature's screams to hear his. Izuku had resigned to brave the windstorm and search for his known path, when a small sound caught his ear. Izuku's eyes skimmed his surroundings, knowing the sound was not a part of the natural disaster. He caught sight of a large clump of rock, and with excitement soon realized that this was the rock the tribe had dubbed All Might's Fist. That would mean that the village was only a few minutes to the north. Izuku was elated to find he knew the way home, but did not begin his departure. He heard the sound again, barely the fall of a coin in a crowded market, but he followed it to where he presumed it came from, past All Might's Fist to the sharp and rocky hillside that lay beyond it. The surface had left Izuku with many cuts and bruises from attempts to climb. Izuku plowed through the wind, reshaping his hair, minutely jerking around to keep his landmark in sight, so he didn't get lost again. He reached the hillside where the bushes were thick and misshapen from the wind's persistence. Here the sound was at its clearest, and he could hear it in its full form, a pained whimper. Immediately, Izuku dug amongst the bushes, shoving at the clumps in search of the sound again. With a particularly hurried action of shoving leaves, he'd almost missed the small bundle of fur sunken into broken branches. The creature whimpered and shivered, but made no other motion at Izuku's presence. Carefully, because Izuku was no stranger to the wildness of forest animals, he touched the shaking bundle. He tensed with the readiness to jerk away, expecting some form of retaliation, clash of teeth or a swipe of claws, but none came. Izuku knew that his mother would not approve of him being so near it, but Izuku couldn't find it in himself to tear away. So as cautiously as he touched the creature before, he slipped his hands around it. He heaved it up, expecting it to be light, but found it was rather heavy and big, almost the size of the child himself. Yet, Izuku still heaved the creature until he could swaddle it like a mother would hug her baby to her shoulder and neck. Izuku thought of a place he could go with the shaking creature. He remembered the little wolf den that Kachin and he had discovered on one of their child-sized explorations. Izuku's gaze flinched to the path home, knowing that the tribe would be upset if he brought the creature. It was a bad omen to bring any of the creatures home that belonged to the wild. So Izuku resolutely trekked to the wolf's den. He was glad when he got there that Kachin and him had opened the hole up a little further so that even after Izuku set the creature in the cave and climbed in himself, there was still room. Izuku searched the creature for wounds, patting lightly with his tiny hands. He reached its foot, where the barest touch sent it into a frenzy of pained movement. Izuku hurried to soothe it. Hey, it's okay, I'm here. Izuku stroked its fur. It's okay, I won't touch it anymore. Only then did the creature's eyes, that had otherwise been shut, force itself open to peer at the human boy. Sparkling, frightened eyes, glancing and searching for something that Izuku could not fathom. He still held its gaze, willing it to trust him. He was not prepared for how far it trusted him. Gradually, the creature morphed, its fur receding to smooth skin, its bones constricting to a humanoid structure, and its face took on yours. Izuku gasped, bewildered, hands hovering over your phone. What are you? You sniffle. I don't know. Oka-san and Oto-san said they would tell me, but they never did. Izuku asked with concern. Did you lose them? In the wind? Were you traveling? Tears missed your eyes in the dull light. The tribe, my people, bad people came. Everything was burning, and my parents, I saw them, Izuku noticed the way your chest rose and fell rapidly, and he moved to calm you. Hey, it's okay, you're safe now. I'm here. I'm Midoriya Izuku. You try to curl in on yourself, but find your ankle erupts in pain. You yelp, and Izuku looks at your ankle in alarm and concern. I'm sorry, I don't have anything on me to bind that. My bindings aren't that good anyway. If only Kachan was here. Kachan? You ask with a tilt of your head. Izuku beams. Kachan is my friend. He's amazing. He's good at everything, even at making splints. Once I broke my arm in the forest, and he put a splint on it for me with only 3 branches. He'd make an amazing healer. But he's really only interested in being a warrior. I want to be a warrior too, but Kachan says I'm too weak. That's not very nice of him. You had been lost in the boy's ramblings, but pout at that statement. He's just being honest. I am rather weak, Izuku says a little glumly. Well, you carried me here, didn't you? You say, so I think you're really strong. Izuku's face began to feel warm. Really? Yeah, of course. This Kachan doesn't know what he's talking about. Izuku said sheepishly. He does know most things, actually. Deku! A voice carries over the winds. Izuku's head snapped to the entrance of the den. Kachan? Deku, where are you? Izuku rushed out of the den and called, Kachan, over here! What are you doing out here, you idiot? A blond boy emerged into the wolf's den. His teeth gritted with irritation. You shift defensively and shrink against the walls, unsure of the newcomer. The blonde pauses as he spots you, and with a flick of his wrist, a small knife appears in his hand. What the hell is that? Deku, get away from it! Izuku shoves between you and Kachan. Kachan, wait! No, they're a person. Show him. You shift hesitantly, revealing yourself. The blonde yanks Izuku to him by his arm. Get away from that thing. We don't know what it is. You shrink in on yourself and say softly, I won't hurt you. Izuku pulled away from his friend. Kachan, stop. They're hurt. Deku, you know what our parents say about strange creatures in the forest. Kachan. Izuku starts to argue, but you cut him off. Izuku, it's okay. Your friend is right. You don't know what I am. I don't know what I am. You say sadly. You should go. Red and green eyes stare at you intently, holding completely different emotions. Izuku faces his friend with solid determination in his gaze. I'm not leaving them. The blonde snarled, a sight that should not have looked so feral on a small child, and turned his burning wine eyes on you. You resist the urge to scuttle away. You weren't sure what he saw as he glared at your nervous form, but a short while later, his bag thumped into the dirt. He began rummaging in it, muttering with irritation. I thought you'd be hurt, Deku, so I brought healing things. I didn't think I'd have to care for some mangy mutt you found in the forest. You scowl at his words, and Izuku crosses his arms. That's not very nice, Kachan, and he turned to you considering, I'm not even sure they're a dog. Katsuki rolled his eyes and looked at you expectantly. Well, what are you? I don't know, you say. Not only is it wild, it's stupid too, the blonde says, gesturing at you apathetically. I am not wild or stupid. I come from a tribe not far from here. I may not be smart, but I'm not stupid either. Izuku's friend began the splint around your leg, not even bothering to look up. Could have fooled me, getting hurt in the storm. He tightened a bandage that made you yelp. Tears wet your eyes at the sudden pain. Izuku hurried to your side, grabbing onto your hand. Hey, it's okay. Kachan is very quick. It'll be over soon. He let you squeeze as Kachan worked, and though it hurt horribly, the splint was done quite quickly. Your ankle throbbed, but at least it was taken care of. Thank you, you say to Kachan. You're welcome, mutt, he says, sitting back looking bored. Kachan, Izuku scolds, to which Kachan rolls his eyes and then pauses. Actually, what is your name? You tell them your name, realizing you hadn't told them before. Izuku's eyes glimmer. That's a very pretty name. But when he tries to pronounce it, he struggles. Katsuki huffs. Just call them Mat, Deku. Kachan, Izuku whines. They're not a mutt. They could be a bear. Katsuki's eyes swivel to you lazily. But that, he said, pointing at a different part of your body that corresponded to your shifted form, looks more like a snow leopard. Deku's eyebrows crinkled adorably. There's really no telling what you are. So, much it is, Katsuki says resolutely. Izuku pouted. Fine, then if you're going to call them that, I'm going to call them something better to be better than your meanness. He thought for a minute and then said brightly, What about Poppy? You nod, not minding the new nickname. It was certainly better than Mutt. I'm okay with that. Izuku beamed. Kachan scowled. Great, Deku. Now let's go home. He grabbed Izuku's wrist, pulling him to the entrance of the wolf den. You're leaving already? You asked anxiously. Little Izuku looked at you, then Kachan, then the windstorm wreaking havoc, and back. Kachan, we can't leave them now. The winds are really bad. They'll get scared. Kachan groaned. They're a wild beast, Deku. They'll be fine. I am not wild, you shout indignantly. Kachan looked at you unimpressed. Whatever. Then turned back to Izuku. Your mother will get worried, Deku. You know how she is. Izuku bit his lip. His eyes shifted to yours. I'm staying. Kachan groaned dramatically. You're so annoying, he said before plopping down onto the ground. You're staying too, Kachan? You asked innocuously. He glared. It's Katsuki to you, and someone has to make sure this idiot doesn't get eaten by you. I wouldn't eat him, you say, mostly in shock, that he'd even imply something so heinous. Sure, I'm sure that's what all the beasts say before they eat a human. Kachan, I don't think beasts talk, Izuku says, a finger to his chin as though he was considering the notion. Shut up, Deku. Whose side are you on? Izuku pouted, puzzled. I didn't know there were sides, Kachan. There are always sides, Deku. Why can't he be on both our sides, Katsuki? You say? Yeah, Izuku asked. I want to be on both your sides. You just can't, Katsuki fumed, crossing his arms stubbornly. Izuku and you share a look, before you decidedly lean forward and say, Hey, I'll be on your side. Katsuki scowled. You will? Yeah, but only if you stop calling me wild. He puffed air through his nose. No. Kachan, you're impossible, Izuku sounded out. You giggle. That's a big word. Katsuki straightened with pride. I taught it to him. You share a short, thoughtful glance with Izuku and then say tentatively, You must be very smart. Of course, I know a lot of big words. I can even read and write now. Katsuki bragged. That's pretty cool, you say. And as Katsuki swells at the praise and expresses his other achievements, you whisper to Izuku covertly. Oto-san always says if you want someone to like you, you should say good things about them. Izuku nods, watching Katsuki, his hands making little motions in the air. Oh, that's a good idea. It seems to work. Katsuki grew tired of boasting his ego eventually. Izuku and you share the sentiment. The wind howled a lullaby to the three exhausted children. In the dimness of the wolf den, you three were drawn together, falling asleep in a cozy pile, peacefully unaware of the future that awaited you. The world of children is always sweet with honey-glossed eyes. The three of you would wake up the next day, comfortable and well-rested, despite sleeping on the ground. You all would make your way out of the den and marvel at the chaos spawned by the windstorm. The forest floor was layered with leaves and broken branches. Large trees tipped over precariously, or were otherwise laid flat, completely uprooted from the ground. While Katsuki thought the force of the wind's power was cool, Izuku worried that the tribe would be affected. He insisted they head back immediately to ensure everything was okay. Before departing, Izuku promised that he would return, though you would not see either of them until days later. You were starving, and beginning to lose hope that Katsuki and Izuku would find their way back to you. Tentatively, you made your way out of the wolf's den. Your ankle was sore, but not as much of a hindrance as you'd expected. You'd found a berry bush with plum fruit. You didn't consider the possibility that the unknown substance could be poisonous, your hunger outweighing the risk. You plundered the poor plant until you were satisfied, and the juices stained your hands in shades of purple. You made the trek back to the wolf's den, not completely satisfied, but at least not as hungry as you were. Only the next time you went in search of the revered bush, you couldn't quite remember where it had been. You'd curled up in the wolf's den as the sun set, hungry and pondering whether you'd survive. Yet you'd stayed in that spot, believing that Katsuki and Izuku might come back. Izuku had promised, and you wanted to believe in that promise. Though it was not Izuku who had popped their head into the wolf's den days later. Katsuki woke you, shouting, "Mutt, you in here?" You jolt up, your tail wagging at the sight of your friend's return. As you shift back to human, you say happily, "You came back!" Katsuki shimmied inside the wolf's den with a sack. Deku wouldn't shut up about bringing you food, so here. Katsuki shoved a bag into your hands, and you grabbed it greedily. You opened the bag to find bread and dried meat. Your eyes water before you snatch the bread and take a large chunk of it. There was a sack of water as well, and you guzzled it down. Between bites you mumble, "Thank you." Katsuki watched you curiously. "You're welcome." His eyes flicked to your ankle. "Your splint is out?" "Yeah, it stopped hurting a few days ago," you say as you chew. Katsuki's eyebrows furrowed. "That's strange. Sensei said it would take a full moon cycle to heal." You shrug. "Maybe it wasn't as bad as it felt." Katsuki hummed and continued to watch you. When you finally take a breather to let your food digest, you ask, "Where's Izuku?" His mother coddles him too much. She doesn't want him to go after nearly losing him in the storm. His mocking tone made it clear how dramatic he thought Izuku's mother was. "And your mother?" Katsuki clicked his tongue, straightening his back with self-satisfaction. "That old hag can't tell me where to go." Your eyes widen with surprise. "Old hag?" "My mother, duh," Katsuki says, as though it was obvious. "You call your mother that?" Katsuki shrugged. "Yeah, it's what she is. So what?" "I would never call my mother." You quiet with realization. You wouldn't really be calling either parent anything now. "What?" Katsuki asked, with a tad bit of annoyance. Your eyes cloud with tears, the memories of their bodies amongst the fires of burning homes. You could still smell the smoke that burned your eyes and corrupted the breathable air. Could still hear the tribe leader screaming at you to flee. "My parents are gone," you say numbly, as tears stray down your cheek. "I won't be calling them anything now." A sob escapes your lips, and then more, until you couldn't stop yourself from crying. Your heart ached horribly in your chest at your loss. How was that possible? Everything you'd ever known, gone in a puff of smoke, and you weren't even sure what caused it. "Gods, you're even more of a crybaby than Deku," Katsuki scoffs. "Look, if it makes you stop crying, I'll take care of you." You face him tearily, his crimson eyes shining with conviction. You had never known a more serious child. You snuffle. "You will?" "Yeah, I'm already babysitting Deku. What's one more wump?" Katsuki says nonchalantly. You wipe your eyes. "You know, Katsuki, you say nice things, but you make them sound like bad things." Katsuki rolled his eyes, like he got the lecture for his attitude on the daily. "Not my problem," he said. Your heart still aches in your chest. but the tension eased a little with the knowledge that you were not completely alone. But you can't depend on us to keep bringing you food. It won't be easy to sneak food every day. You're going to have to learn to survive on your own as well. You nod, because it made sense. But the idea of having to live independently still made you nervous. Right. I'll teach you. I'm the best in our group, Katsuki said with the same inflated ego you were slowly growing accustomed to. Katsuki was self-absorbed, with a head too big for his small shoulders, but in a way, it was endearing. His confidence was reassuring, and you could understand why Izuku had praised him so earnestly. The next time you'd meet, Izuku had joined him. This time, they brought a bowl of rice and curry, carefully packaged. Izuku spluttered out apologies and rambled on about why he couldn't come sooner. I wanted to come and see you, but Okara-san was worried I'd get lost. She's always worried. She thinks I'm going to fall down a river or something, but I promise I'll try and come see you whenever I can. This will not happen. Deku, for the love of gods, shut up. I'm sure they get it, Katsuki grumbles. You smile at their antics and reassure Izuku. It's alright, Izu. Katsuki said that he can teach me how to survive out here, so you don't have to come here all the time. Izuku's eyes lit up. Yes, we can have lessons. It'll be so much fun. Who said I was teaching you, Deku? Katsuki yells indignantly. You're in the same group as me. You should already know this stuff. Izuku whined. But Kachan, you know it's hard for me to pick up on this stuff like everyone else. Plus, I can't even do magic yet. Katsuki stubbornly said, No. You can do magic? You say with wide eyes. Katsuki opened his palms wide, and sparks emitted from it. You eye them in wonder. That's so cool. Katsuki shrugged. I know. Didn't your tribe practice magic, puppy? Izuku asked curiously. Not that I knew of. You said, oh wait, my uncle used to do this thing, where he'd make a coin appear from behind my ear. Like from thin air. Katsuki groaned loudly. That's a trick. A lame trick, not magic. You deflate. Then I guess no. But that's why you have to teach us, Kachan, cause you're the best, Izuku said. Katsuki glared, crossing his arms. No. You know, Katsuki, you say carefully, my mother always said that teaching others something helps you learn it as well. So think about how much better you'll be if you help both of us. You'd be better than even your teacher. Katsuki's eyes flicked to yours, considering. Fine, but you two better pay attention to me. You nod eagerly along with Izuku, trying to conceal your smile. It was becoming easier to smooth out Katsuki's tantrums. And it would go on like that for many moon cycles. Katsuki and Izuku would spend every moment they could spare sneaking back into the forest, smuggling food or blankets or anything else they thought you could use. As they learned the teachings of the tribe, they passed them to you. Together you learned about the basics of survival and healing. How to start a fire, how to skin a deer, how to tell the difference between poisonous plants and eating ones. Katsuki would take his lessons very seriously, going as far as to make Izuku and you sit for hours until you got a task right. There were times at night you could still hear him screaming some form of criticism. You're making too much noise, Deku. The animals can hear you from beyond the mountains. Or to you, your fire is too small. Do you plan on eating by the next full moon? Katsuki was harsh, but he was a good instructor. He showed you your mistakes and helped correct them. He pushed you until you got it right. And on the days that the two boys could not sneak away with offerings, you'd be grateful for it. The three of you managed to mold the small wolf den into a plausible hideout for them and a livable home for you. On the nights they'd sneak away to rest in the wolf's den, as they had the first night, Katsuki and Izuku would spend what felt like hours retelling the folk tales of their people. And as the warrior All Might collapsed onto his knees before he vanquished his foe, he sealed his magic away within the very rock that lay not far from here, Izuku said, his excitement barely contained as he told the story. Katsuki whistled as Izuku spoke, barely paying attention. A small lamp lit the wolf's den, casting a dim, watery light. It is said that the magic lays in wait for its successor, that whomever should touch the rock in the time of need and be deemed worthy would inherit the power of All Might. Whoa, you say in awe of the story. Poppy, you should try and touch the rock. Maybe you could inherit it. We all try at some point, Izuku explains. It's just a story, Deku, Katsuki says, not looking up. You're only saying that because the rock didn't choose you. Well, yeah, because if the stupid clump of dirt isn't going to choose me, then it's definitely not going to choose some other extra. Am I an extra, Katsuki? You say, feigning hurt. Katsuki glares. No, but it's not going to pick you if it didn't pick me. Mean, you say, with no actual feeling. Though you weren't sure how deeply you believed the tale, you announced, just to annoy Katsuki, well, I'm going to touch All Might's fist tomorrow and try for myself. Katsuki had gloated for days when the rock did nothing but tower ominously over you after you touched it. In the end, you labeled the story as a myth. Though the days and nights spent having fun were amazing, they were not what made the place special. No, what made the wolf's den special were the times when it was used for solace. When Katsuki had a particularly horrible fight with his mother that left him raging and frustrated, he'd kick stones and rip apart bushes, ranting away, and then huffing and exhausted, he'd make his way back to the wolf's den to sulk as you console him. When Izuku's self-doubt began to take form, and he'd dig himself into a pit of self-loathing because he couldn't keep up with the others in his group. When he'd had a particularly tough fail and appear in front of the wolf's den sniffling with large tears dripping from his face, he'd spend the rest of the afternoon sobbing in your arms. The wolf's den was as much their place as it was yours. The bonds you'd built were strong, but there came a day when they'd begun to strain. The day when Izuku found out he'd never be able to use magic. You'd held the sobbing boy in a tight hug, tightening every time his cries heightened and struck at your heart. I will never be a warrior like Kachan and All Might, Izuku wept. You rubbed soothing circles into his back. It's okay, Izuku. It's going to be okay. Izuku's sorrow was interrupted by Katsuki shoving his way into the den. He'd grown over the many moon cycles. Another few, and he may not fit in the entrance at all. Deku, are you still whining about not becoming a warrior? Katsuki yelled insensitively. Katsuki, you chid. Stop being mean. What? It's not like he can't do other things, Katsuki griped. Warriors are the strongest in the tribe. They have to have magic. Well, maybe Izuku can do it without magic, you counter. Izuku looked up with wide, hopeful eyes. You think so? He asked. So painfully vulnerable as a boy who'd had all his dreams crushed should be. You find yourself nodding. I think you can do this, Zu. We'll train together. I bet you'll be the greatest warrior who ever lived. No, he won't, Katsuki shouted hotly. That's going to be me. You exhale exasperated. Both of you can be the greatest warrior. No, there can only be one, Katsuki says. Izuku tilts his head amicably, his tears drying with newfound purpose. Okay, Kachan, I'll be the second greatest. Katsuki huffed. We'll see about that, Deku. Stop being so useless first. At the time, you'd been relieved that the fight had ended so swiftly. However, from that day, Katsuki's animosity only grew. He taunted Izuku endlessly. The lesson steadily became less productive and more of a pick-on-Deku session. He would shove Izuku and tear into him for simple things Izuku would do. It had been horrible, and you tried to stop it, but where Katsuki would stop today, his temper would swell to aid the next day's torment. It was a vicious cycle. Izuku tried to keep smiling, but you could see how Katsuki's abrupt change wore at the small boy. You'd drawn the line when Katsuki had used his magic on Izuku. A small argument, and the next thing you smell, char. Katsuki had exploded the clothing at Izuku's shoulder, burning the material and a part of his skin. Izuku lay shaking on the ground as Katsuki stormed off into the forest to the tribe. He walked fast and you'd run to catch up with him. What is with you? How can you do that to him? You screamed more stunned than anything else. Katsuki reeled when you grabbed his hand, shoving you, and you stumbled back. He bared his teeth, not unlike a rabid animal. What do you know? You're just a dumb beast. Katsuki spoke like this all the time, and it shouldn't have hurt, but it did, because this time he sounded like he meant it. Well then, why do you hang out with me if I'm just a dumb, stupid beast? You say through the sting of his words. Katsuki growled, You're right, I shouldn't be friends with you. Or Deku, you're both just dead weight and you'll slow me down. He put his hand to his chest, professing, I'm going to be a warrior, and we hunt the likes of you. You stepped back, astonished. Katsuki had never threatened you before. Not like this. You don't mean that, Katsuki, you say softly. Katsuki threw his hands into a wide, offensive stance, small pops emitting from his palms. A warning. You better run off, if you know what's good for you, beast. You don't move. Frozen, staring at a blonde boy you couldn't recognize. He jolted forward and you flinched back. Katsuki sneered, meeting your eyes head-on. But before you could find any sort of explanation in those red irises, he turned and was gone. You let him leave, believing that he'd return tomorrow, that he'd blow off his behavior on Izuku and you being crybabies, and you'd both overlook it, like it had never happened. When you returned and Izuku looked to you with wide, teary eyes, asking what had happened, you didn't have the heart to tell him. Saying them out loud would only make everything far too real. Izu, you say gently, I think you shouldn't go by Katsuki for now. I think maybe he needs some space. Izuku eyed you with concern. Oh, okay. Katsuki didn't return, but you held on to the hope that he would, that all the time you'd spent together had meant more than some fickle fight. Your fate would be crushed a few weeks later. You and Izuku played tag in the forest. You'd given him a head start so you could chase in your shifted form, and things would be fair. When you did catch up to him, he was not alone. You heeded all the warnings Katsuki and Izuku had given you, automatically lying low and out of sight. 3 children stood before Izuku, Katsuki and 2 others you didn't know. Ka-chan, Izuku asked cautiously, What's going on? Ka-chan? One of the children laughed. You still let him call you that baby name? Katsuki growled, Deku, I told you to stop calling me that. He thrust his hand out, detonating an explosion much bigger than the one you'd seen him blast before. Izuku fell back from the force, and you hoped, not the burn. Alarmed, you leaped forward on instinct, but an explosion emits right at your face. So suddenly, you barely left your hiding spot. It was too close, too loud and too bright, and altogether disorientated you, leaving you blinking blind spots from your enhanced vision. What was that? One of the kids asked, a little fear in their voice. Probably some beast in the forest, Katsuki replied with boredom. We should head back, the other child said, frightful. Katsuki shrugged nonchalant, turning his back on Izuku. Try not to get eaten, Deku. Your eyes clear as they move away. You watch them leave. Katsuki turned, meeting your eyes through the leaves and branches that hid you, but only for a split second. Then he turned his back on you and Izuku. It felt final, a gross goodbye, and a last message that Katsuki was no longer one of them. You approach Izuku when you are finally alone. He was sniffling. Are you okay? You ask, shifting beside him. Izuku hummed through tears. I just miss the old Ka-chan. You lean against Izuku's shoulder, feeling your tears burn at your throat. Me too. But neither of you would see that Katsuki from your childhood again for years to come.